And I'm probably also going to share my screen at the same time. So feel free to keep looking at your own mirror or look at my screen share. Cool. So yeah, either focus on use the screen share or have a look at your own browser with Miro up. So what we did on Monday was we sort of played around with the GitHub API and we test drove making a request to the API and then rendering a component that had some information from it. And we have a look at it. This is essentially the thing that we did on Monday. I've removed some of the styling. I put it in the center and just it's now on the left because I want to use this framework to help us arrange this. So this list of items comes from the request that we make. If you remember, we make a request to this API. It's very simple at the moment. We haven't done much refactoring of this, so we're just keeping it as it was on Monday. Make a request and we extract some data and we render it on the page. So that's the moment, that's where we're at, and this is the result. If just to give a quick thumbs up if you're like sort of like happy with where we're at the moment from Monday.
Can I ask one thing, Ed?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because on the GitHub one, so obviously I got the one working that it shows my name, but then what was your vision for, that's why I didn't want to carry on because I just wanted to get it right. So for what we do with the actual other information, so if I created like the link that goes to my repos, but then what it currently comes up with is like all the JSON of the repos, because the GitHub API, the one that we got, doesn't have individual links for all the repos. So was it the case that I should try and get so I didn't want to cheat and just put links like hyperlinks to all the repos, because that wasn't the point of the exercise, because I could do that quite easily. But was it to start parsing the JSON and then, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. I'll lock this for a moment. Now, there's going to be a few different layouts that you can sort of think about, and what we're going to do today, hopefully, will give you some tools to think about how you want to lay out the information that you're getting from the API. And you may want to do several requests to get different information depending on what you want your portfolio app to look like. So if, for example, you want to, and this is where my area of expertise is not as high as maybe everyone would like it to be. So we can work out a lot of this thing together. It's just something I haven't prioritized in my own learning, trying to figure out how to lay things out on the page. But you can think about a page, any sort of which way, and you may want to try and lay out on this page. If we try and zoom in here so you can see it, or you can look at your own board. You may want to try and have a section over here that is divided into maybe, I don't know, your photo, and then maybe you want to have like a series of projects, maybe you want 3 sort of like areas here where you demonstrate like the name of your projects, and then you click on them and it goes to like your sort of repository, and maybe it's just like, I don't know, some information here about yourself, things that you like doing programming wise. So maybe this is like one version that you'd like to do, but maybe you can rearrange these things around and play around with it. So the first step with all of this is just trying to get a visual picture about what you want it to look like. And at the moment, I haven't given any sort of default layouts and whatnot. So we can definitely talk about it if you want to have a chat about what it could look like. Bear in mind, I'm not the greatest at trying to give tips, design tips, but I can definitely like help implement things once you have an idea. In order to be able to lay these things out, I want to spend this session just talking about a tool that can help us do this. And one of the things that will help us is essentially what we call a grid. Some kind of grid layout, some kind of grid system. And if you look at anyone familiar with grid systems, either got through any CSS frameworks, can we click thumbs up? Cool. So like a grid, if you think about any particular website, maybe let's go to bbc.co.uk as an example. If you look at the content on the page here, you can sort of almost see that there's like a basis of how the content's arranged. We have like a row, so I have one row here, which is divided into the moment 3 columns, but you can see that the left-hand side is exactly the same width as 2 on the right, and there's space on either side. Grids are usually a way to be able to lay information out on a page consistently and easily. We use frameworks that have grid systems to allow us to like more easily lay things out on a grid, rather than having to create our own grid and then use it, which is always feel free to do so, just to understand how it works. And the advantage of this is that when we resize it, maybe it will also break at different points. So we're still the same, and then we have one break there. And we keep going, and then it breaks again. So a grid system with breakpoints to sort of reorganize itself is part of responsive design. And most grids have some kind of way to respond to the screen size and to lay things out nicely. So that's one of the things that will help us when we use this tool. And there are a bunch out there, but we'll use one at the moment just to focus on it. So we can see here that there's like rows and sort of columns of information, and that's how most websites work. For better or for worse, there's a lot of not really controversy, but debate about whether this is actually a good thing in web development, because it makes all websites look the same kind of thing. But we're going to use it to speed up our development. Okay, so the original question, Heli, was what to do with that data, right? And the question is, there's a lot of choice in front of us, and in order to know a little bit more about what we can do, we're going to focus on this tool to think about how to lay information out. Then maybe part of today's session will be just like mock up a few like possibilities of what you want it to look like, and then try and implement it. Does that sound right? Cool. Well, let's just dive into it. And again, as Heli jumps into questions, please feel free to jump in with any questions as we go. All right. So we were here yesterday, Monday, sorry. I guess maybe like the easiest thing to do for today's example is to take the information. What's this? Move over in a different color. So purple. And what I want is, rather than all the stuff on the left as it is at the moment, what I want is, let's put it in the center, and maybe rather than just text, we have like little cards like this. I'm not going to be very imaginative. I'm going to just, first of all, the first thing about this is like, how do we think about the layout? So put things in the center of the page, maybe. And then the second part is create like cards for each headline. So at the moment, we just have links and text on the page. I want to move it all to the center and like wrap each of these links in some kind of card. A little bit similar to like the bbc.co.uk, I think. Yeah, okay, well, let's start there and let's see how far we get, and if we want to extend it, we can. Cool. Does that make sense? What our mission is at the moment is move the text across the page using a grid layout, and then use cards to wrap each of the links. Yeah. So let's have a look at Material UI. We get a bunch of pre-made components to help us do this stuff. So let's have a look. In order to use it, we have to install a bunch of packages for it. So let's start with that. I don't want to use npm, I just want to use yarn, yes. So the moment it's running on the left, I'll just keep it here. Yarn, add, and then let's go explore.
Sorry, Ed.
Yeah,
could I ask what's the why is the preference of more using Yarn rather than npm? Is it because the Yarn install the package locally on your computer, so you don't need to go to the npm website to fetch the package every time, so speed up the time efficiency? Or
yeah, great question. So Node Package Manager and Yarn do the same thing. They're both package managers. They're both responsible for managing each dependency and its own dependencies, and making sure there's a representative, essentially, tree of dependencies for your project. And they work in maybe slightly different ways, like implementation-wise, but they're responsible for doing the same thing. So essentially, it's an either-or. You either decide to use npm, or you decide to use Yarn in terms of your package manager. So feel free to use either one. I think the default for React is they suggest using Yarn. It may be slightly more efficient, but it's just a choice.
But what about, for example, in the npm, you can run a script on the package.json. So if you use Yarn, then you have to use the Yarn to run that script rather than using the npm to run the script.
Yeah. If you've installed npm, which you very likely have, you can still use npm to run scripts, but you can also use Yarn. So in the same way that we do here, I can use Yarn to do test or start or whatever I want. It still looks in the same place to get some of those things. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So, but for the Yarn, you don't need to like make a file as the package.json to run it. It will just naturally know where to find the script.
Because your package.json is not attached to whether you use Node Package Manager or not. It's essentially, it's like, think of it almost like a gem file, right? It just lists dependencies. Even if you use RBEM or Ruby Version Manager or Change Ruby or anything like that. It's agnostic to the tool that you're using to actually go fetch things.
Yeah, the reason I asked for that was because of the first tutorial when we used the Webpack server, that we have to change the script in order to run it. So that is changing the script and the package.json.
Yeah.
Otherwise, when we just run it, then we have to use the node module in order to run it. So that's why I was asking.
Cool.
Yeah, got it.
Nice. And so even here it says choose which one you want to do, and either install it with npm or install it with Yarn. Cool. Okay, I'm going to, so now I've installed it, we can have a look at usage. And essentially what we're doing is we're just importing components from a third-party library of components rather than importing components from our own local set of components. And that's essentially what we're doing, right? So the super high level is we're going to be importing components to help us that are pre-made with style rules already in place. So let's jump down a little bit to maybe components, layout. Yeah, let's go to layout. Let's go to grid. Okay, so just want an example, really. How do I get a simple example? View. Okay, so what's this telling me? This is not a simple example, so let's go find the simplest example. Well, that looks simple. Okay, well, let's try and use this example. What essentially is happening here? We have a grid of 3 columns and 3 rows. Okay, so essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take all this. And for each of these grid, for the grid component, I need to import grid. So let's do both those things. I want to not just in this element, I just want it in my app element for the moment, because I want to render everything. And if I wanted it not just the whole app, I could find a component and just make it in the component area of my page. But let's put it here. Yeah, I don't need any form rows at the moment, so get rid of those. And I need to import grid. Where should I put it? Up here. Okay, so I'm importing grid and I'm trying to figure out how this grid system works. I have 1 grid outside, and then I'm going to have, I don't think I need 3. Do I need 3? I don't think I need 3. So I'll just get rid of I just want 1 row rather than 3 rows. And each of these form rows, I guess this is where I then specify how many columns I want. Okay, so we'll take one of these. I don't want a paper thing either. That. So I have 1 main area, and then I'm going to have 1 row, and in this row I want 3 columns. And the way that I'm thinking about it is, if I go back to my diagram here, is I see here not just 1 column, I see 3 columns, but I only want the middle column to be with stuff. All right, so here's going to be a column, here's going to be a column, and here's going to be a column. But this is going to be empty, this is going to be empty, and this is going to be headlines. My handwriting is great, isn't it? Okay, so if I have 3 of these, and this number 4 essentially represents, if you haven't used grid systems before, is like a ratio out of 12. And this essentially says 3 equal columns, because they all have to add up to 12 in a row. So if I want 3 equal rows, 3 equal columns in a row, then I have to use the same number. If I want to have it so the middle one is slightly bigger, then we can change it. So we have slightly narrower columns on the outside and like a main column in the middle. I guess this is where I want to put my headlines in here. This is, I want to render my headlines component in the middle column. Okay, well, let's see what's happening at the moment. Okay, so I've gone ahead and if I inspect the page, I can kind of see that we have one main component, one main column in the middle of like half of the whole width, 6 out of 12, and then on the left hand side is empty, and the right hand side is empty. So let's make sure they're all centered. So I guess headlines. What gets returned from headlines? I have a div with headlines, so I guess I could just create a headlines.css file here and go headlines and text line. Go super simple and just keep everything in the middle. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Headlines, we import the CSS, we have a class in headlines, we select it, and then we apply the rule, text line center. Cool. All right, so almost exactly where we were before, right? On Monday. But now we're using a grid system to lay content out. And we have that tool at our disposal. Now let's try and think about, we want to wrap each of these elements in a card. So let's go back to our framework and find a way to lay out something. So card, okay, let's look at that. Cards contain content and actions about a single object, like this. Okay. Let's have a look at what this is. Show the source. Crikey, okay. I guess. Well, let's just take a bit of it and see what happens. I'm not really sure what some of these things do, but let's have a look. So there's like there's an outside card element, and then there's an inner card content, and there's card actions. And this looks like that, right? And then there's also typography element for text. All right. Let's start off by just importing them. Well, I don't think I need all of these, but I'll just grab them. Let's put this, when we look at this will be in this components, because this component will need these layout components. So let's put it here. I don't need a button, I don't need card actions, so just do card and card content and typography. Okay, so then we'll be working within this part here. So let's do card and close our card. How does that look? Card is a class, I can't bother with the class name at the moment. And then inside it has card content. Okay, let's do that. Card content. And then around each of the texts it has a typography. I'm not going to spell that. Typography. Okay, we'll put this in the typography maybe. Hold on, let's just double check what we're doing. Okay, I guess if I have a typography, I don't need a paragraph. But we want, hold on, I'm going too quickly. We want this to create loads of cards, right? So let's loop through it and put all of this around it. And close it properly. Okay, so rather than create one card, we want to loop through each of the headlines, create a card, and with a card content and a typography that is the link, just the link. And this is a thing that's been created loads of times, so let's put the key there. Okay, I'll rather than keep going, I'm just going to look at it in the moment, see what errors are happening. And this makes a little bit of sense in my head. Look through, create a bunch of cards. Let's see what difference there is. Headlines, expected a function call, and source, because I'm using this notation with curly brackets, I need to use a return. Oh, okay. So if you can see, I'm not sure if you can see, but there are like some cards that have appeared on the page, something. Let's see if we can make it a little bit more visual. Let's put some spacing in between them, maybe. So we're selecting with headlines, I guess. Let's go something like, let's put margin around them, just a little bit of margin. Note that hasn't successfully, I guess because the headlines is the whole thing. I want a single one. So let's make another selector. That's just a single headline. And put the margin there and add a class name to a single card. Okay, so a little bit better. We have a little bit. They're still quite wide. Maybe I don't want it to be that wide. So maybe I'll go back to app.js and say, actually, rather than 6, maybe I still just want an equal ratio to make the middle one smaller. All right, fits better the text. Okay. So I've successfully added components. I've imported them. I've played around with some of the style to get it looking on the page. Maybe for each of the cards, maybe we could be a little bit more explicit with saying what you're hovering over and do something like, this is Helly, your idea, because I just remember you saying something about on hover. So let's do something like background, color, beige. All right. I guess we could keep going, but that's probably as much as I wanted to be able to demonstrate at the moment about how we use a framework to create a grid of some lay components out, and then start playing around with design and style and things like that. So I'm going to pause here and just open up for questions and thoughts about how we use a tool like Material Design. What are your thoughts? What would you like me to talk about or explain, or is that good? Yeah, hey, go ahead. Yeah. So again?
Me again with the JSON parsing. So if I wanted to create a card just trying to figure out what to do with the JSON data. So is it a case that I should actually go back to the GitHub API and find a way that it would fetch the
exactly
repo? But
cool.
So I can't do that with the type of data that I'm getting from.
Cool. So this is the kind of response that we got back from that first API call, right?
Yeah, but it was much less. It just had like a link to the repos page, but not to each individual one. But when I link to it, it then gives me a massive long JSON of all my repos from the last kind of year. And
cool.
So I somehow dig into each of those.
Exactly. So you could try and just get the first 10, or when you've got all the information back, you only need a bunch of them. Imagine. Well, let's have a look. So you made a request to GitHub API repositories, right? Just want integration. There's only give me the actual. Yeah. Just the overview. Reference repositories. Is this really do you have a URL that you made a request to that I can have a look at?
Shall I share my screen if I?
Yes, that would be a good idea.
Sorry, and I don't want to take up if other people have other questions. It's just like me talking, which is quite boring. So please, someone interrupt, for God's sake. Hold on a second. Okay, I'm going to. Okay, so this is what I got to, and I used Flexbox, so it's like
nice.
not quite what you would. So, and I got the thing to react when you hover over it. Anyway, so if I click on blogs, then it's obviously just a hyperlink, so it takes me to the right. But then if I click on this, it comes up with, so these are all individual old, like, and it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, so this is for each individual repository, right?
And it's a really long, it's a really long list. So if I wanted to find a certain one, I just need to figure out how to get the thing to get the right stuff out of JSON and then pull
exactly. Essentially, you're just going to be manipulating data. So I can see at the moment that this is a list. So you have an array of items. And each of them, if you just get like the name or the full name, you'll be able to have that. Or each of them also has a URL. So if you go down to HTML URL, that will also give you a link specifically to it.
So on a card, like if you wanted, name of the project and then whatever else.
Exactly. You could have the name as like the link text, and when you click it, it goes to the sort of HTML URL value here, and that'd be quite fun.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I just basically have to figure out how to.
Yeah, and you might even be able to get your pinned repositories. You might be able to have a look at the API and see, can you get pinned repositories, which is just 6? Maybe that would be easier,
that would
or something like that.
I just figure out by myself what the syntax is in React for getting all that stuff. Because I mean, I've done it in Ruby, but I haven't done it in this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just JavaScript at the moment, and then you can wrap it in a component. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So if you can execute it like on your from your browser using Fetch and just try and get that to work, then you can then put it into your React application.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts or questions at the moment for adding a tool like Material Design? Cool, awesome. All right, so I'm gonna stop the recording now, and then remember where's disappeared. So stop recording.